Before the actual class, I would like to first make a few announcements. Rather, it's my nagging than announcements. First off is that whatever department you're in, whatever position you hold in the Sangha, on one hand, I think it's quite important to blend with everyone, to have good interpersonal relationship with everyone, not just on words, rather it's your actions. And do not create disharmony within the Sangha, let you be lay practitioner or monastic. It should be then completely and wholeheartedly creating a harmonious relationship with each other, because we're a Vajra Sangha. We are not like a worldly wife and husband or any kind of worldly relationships. Therefore, in the working together in the Sangha, sometimes maybe it is because of your different opinion, maybe it is because of something else. If you were to have opinions towards each other, in fact, when it comes to publishing, when it comes to organization and so on, if you do not cooperate together within the Sangha, it could create lots of difficulties, both financial and difficulties coming from others or different view from others. In fact, people are very smart. If you are just saying something but you feel something else, other people could tell it as well. So people who hold position to volunteer in positions in Sangha, you should then try your best to hold a good relationship with one another. The second thing is that volunteers who hold positions, you should then make a progress. It could be progress in terms of your own trade. It could be progress in terms of your listening, contemplation, and practice. And I have to point out the cooks over here. I know that you work very hard. I know that everyone has different tastes, different preferences, and very difficult to fulfill everyone's wishes. But sometimes it's not really only subjective, it is objective as well. As I stated earlier, I think volunteers in different positions, such as in Langar, when it comes to cooking food for others, I think you should try your best to fulfill the majority of people's taste. Even if you can't, at least you can learn. It is not as difficult as Uttaratantra Shastra. I also watched other things. In fact, I also expanded my own field of learning, such as cooking mushroom soup. Last night I made a soup and it tastes really good. And this morning when I made the soup, it didn't taste as good. So sometimes I doubt my own cooking as well, my own trade as well. Anyhow, my hope to you is to continue to learn, to advance your own skills as well as your study, contemplation, and practice. And the third thing is in terms of our own actions, your own behavior, your demeanor, it should fit into the local culture, including religious as well as habits. Do not try to stand out in every aspect of life and not blending in with anyone at all. So sometimes, even if you do not evaluate yourself, other people will. And if everyone feels bad about you, then it will create a difficulty, unnecessary difficulty to you. The fourth aspect, the fourth thing I would like to address is that in our daily life, during our studying, contemplation, and practice, and in our current period of life, which is the best time to study, I really want to ask you to try your best to be diligent and do not waste your time in laziness. In terms of your daily schedule, your class attendance, there are people who just come here for a short period of time. And if you come here for a very short period of time, even if you come here for a week, a month or so, then if there's some opportunity for you to study, some opportunity of classes to attend, then why don't you go and attend those classes to learn something while you're still there? Well, there's such opportunity. I think this is quite important. Even if you have a month or two, I'm sure there are Dharma masters who would allow you to just temporarily join the class for a month or two. If you just come here for eating and for traveling and so on, this is really not valuable. It's not meaningful. If you travel to some places, if you travel to some centers, even only for a week or 10 days, for business or for pleasure, you should visit the centers and try to study and attend classes as much as possible. Even if you can attend 10 classes and then 5 classes. So try your best to utilize all the opportunities to study. And I really think that our Dharma masters would allow such situations and give you permissions as well. In fact, I had other things that is. There was a Kempo, senior Kempo. His name is Sasong. He's a senior Kempo, and he passed away today. He made a great contribution to our academy in Larangar. I think lots of the young people probably don't know, but he was an old Kempo who followed Phuntsok Rinpoche for 20 years and made great contribution, who is also a very wonderful practitioner. I was telling another Kempo who was my friend, saying that he was the last senior Kempo that was still with us from Phuntsok Rinpoche's time, and now he passed away. So all the old Kempos, the senior Kempos, all passed away. So now it's really only the second, third, fourth generation of the Kempos. So it seems that we're really lining up to meet the impermanence of death, line by line, one by one, generation by generation. On one hand, I am very much aware of it. On the other, I am very much contemplating up on impermanence. I think many people probably would feel that I probably would stay in this world for a long time, so probably be alive for a long period of time. But you never know, because there are different kinds of sickness, such as cancer, in stage 4. Time doesn't wait. Also, commute, the different methods of commute could cause very sudden death, such as when you were still sleeping in the car, but you could never really open up your eyes anymore. So from the inner or outer causes, we should be aware that impermanence is never too far away from us. I don't really want all of us to chant and dedicate merit to each one who dies, but at least to this senior Khenpo who served this Sangha for 20 years, we should then chant money for him.
Chirtir namka kansong wa mchafshir nyewer kuba meda devshin senjin tamchil la ninda nyewer kuba meda chirtir jikten tamchit namka lana tiejan devshin dimashi yang la devshin dimashi yang la wongbor namna tiejan chirtir namka mei mernam gi ngonchit namyang tsikba meda devshin donan chiwa dang nawa Argawe meima tsu sana chila chirlong la long namka la raptor nem kana longdang chitak la sayi kam la ne ma yin devjin pongbo kam nam da devjin pongbo kamwang nam ledang nyumo takla ne ledang nyumo tsirjin man ilab shepar takdak tsirjin maya yevshid na semgi takba raw ne semgi ramjin churnam na tamjil layang nepa meda sadang jawa pongbo dang kimjin kam nam shibrasha Chekam dangja lijin ji ledang nyumo shishar de tsirjin mayan yevshin longo kam dang jagar ta ramjin namki kamjin de devjin ne min ne ba med tsirjin mayan yevshid semgi ramjin langne de tsirjin mayan yevshi ji ledang nyumo raptavshi ledang nyumo chele na pongbo kimchit kamnam jong chirtarin jigdang chagpa tar Kedan jigbaran yerwa yin, semgi ramjin namka ye kamr tar jemede, jenmede, jedan jemede, tsokba mechang, kewa dan jigba ne, jigdan ne la gang yot ma yin. 接下来我们讲那个
So we'll continue with the Uttaratantra Shastra. We are in the first chapter. We are studying the first chapter. It talks about the Buddha nature. Previously, we've already talked about the outline, which talks about the 10 ways to describe the Buddha nature. We've already studied the previous 6. The essence and cause, the fruition, the function, and so on. So today we're going to talk about the 7th. The 7th is changelessness. So in terms of changelessness, it has the extensive explanation as well as the detailed explanation. Previously, we've talked about the reason, and now we're going to talk about the extensive explanation. Previously, we talked about the differences and similarities between the mundane beings and the bodhisattvas and the Buddhas. also the impure, the impure pure, and the pure state. And then it talks about the changelessness of Tathagata. So, first of all, during the stage of being a mundane being, being a impure being, in fact, the Buddha nature had never changed either. So from this aspect, how so? And over here it talks about it from these two aspects. First one is the explanation: the essence is undefiled and free from extremes. And then the way essence is free from arising and the ceasing, and its purity is not touched by defilement. So we'll only talked about the short explanations, and later on, tomorrow we'll continue from there. I think you should try your best to analyze as much as you can, because this time when we study Uttaratantra Shastra, I believe when it comes to when it comes to Buddha nature, lots of people don't understand why, and there are people who slander because they don't understand why. Therefore, we should take this opportunity to study this text so that we can be completely purified from all the wrong views about Buddha nature. The Uttaratantra Shastra, to me, I feel this is quite necessary, especially for majority of us who grew up in very existentialist, who grow up in family and a society who hold tightly towards the existentialism philosophy, as well as a philosophy that has wrong view. Most of people who have such kind of environment to grow up, they have rather very coarse idea about sentient beings, about Buddha nature. So when we have this opportunity to study this text, I think we should take this opportunity to build up our right view. And I'm sure majority of you will receive different benefits based on your own auspicious connections to it, based on your devotion, and based on your understanding, and so on. There are people who have great connection to the Mahayana teaching. On top of that, who has really sharp wisdom. And then I'm sure for this kind of people, the teaching that is taught in this text will be easily grasped. And there are a group of people who probably don't have a very close connection to this text, or they don't have a sharp faculty or sharp wisdom to study this, and then maybe they don't have as much of a benefit that they could receive from it. But I think you should persist, despite that maybe you do not understand what this sutra is talking about. At least it could plant a seed in your mind stream for lifetimes. After all, this is one of the most unsurpassable, one of the most important teaching in the third turning of the wheel of the Dharma.
然后也是一个无有阻碍的非常细微的。为什么非常细微呢？一般粗大的一些色法声音呢，这些都是读我们这个就眼根呐、耳根呐、鼻根呐，包括意识跟面前呢，就是可以现前，就是可以成为这个根茎啊，就是所以他们粗大的这些都可以的。但这个虚空呢，就是它可以说这个细微，又可以说广大，又可以说无碍，就是这样的原因呢。就是它就让偏于这个所有的法啊，就是所有的这个法，它非常细微的缘故呢，它这里的细微就是它其实是它有一种特殊的特点吧，就是它可以就是伴随着就是所有的这个色法，但是呢，就是这些色法的这个性质，色法本来都是它有什么这个无常也好，就是无我也好，或者色法呢，就是经常有这个变化啊等等，这些呢就是从来都是没有让我过啊，就是这个色法是就是会坏的。比如说我们一个什么这个碗的话，那就是就坏了；这个画的话，那就是一会儿这个谢了啊，就或者说是这个茶呢就是酿了，就是凡是有很多无常的这种变化嘛。但是这些呢，就是对虚空从来都是没有这个染上过。同样的道理，就是对每一个众生而言的话呢，其实相续当中呢，就是都具足什么呢？就是这个光明这个如来藏啊，就自性清净的这个光明如来藏。那这个光明如来藏呢，就是它便于这个诸便于每一个众生啊，就诸便于每一个众生。但这个众生的这个相续当中的这个烦恼也好，过患也好，这些呢，就是从来都是没有让过，就是自己的这个如来藏。所以在这个宝性论当中呢，主要是很多都用虚空来比喻，用虚空来比喻，用这个我们这个外面的这个世界来比喻。外面的这个世界来比喻的时候呢，我们要知道，就是外面是一个地水火风空的这样的一个世界，那么它呢，就是这样的一个圆曲规律当中可以允许的。同样的道理，我们的这个身体和意识呢，就是也是一个世界啊。就按照释论金刚的观点的话呢，其实我们每一个人生呢，就是人生的一个世界。但这个世界呢，跟外界就是
body and consciousness is also as a world. Our world, according to Kalachakra, is just like the external world that is universe. It could then all permeate all the elements such as earth, water, fire, and space. From the condition aspect, from the ultimate aspect, in fact, it permeates all the sentient beings' own individual cosmos or world, so to speak, and that has never been polluted. So from this aspect, all the Mahayana scriptures described this Buddha nature as pure and luminous. As the sutra said, told this story that Manjushri told this teaching on how Buddha nature is completely pure, without any pollution. I think in the 8 Bodhisattvas biography, last year I was going to ask you to study the Sarah Condrell's biography, but I haven't really finished the book yet. Therefore, maybe you can study the 8 Bodhisattvas biography instead. So during the 8 Bodhisattvas biography, it described this story that Bodhisattva Manjushri gave teaching on this purity and this primordial unpollutedness resides in everyone. And then all the Sangha members, all the bhikshus heard this teaching from Manjushri. They felt that, well, if this is the teaching, then what's the point of getting ordained? So 200 of them then left. Manjushri did not feel heartbroken like some of the Dharma teachers will if their students would have left them. Instead, Manjushri transformed himself or transformed or conjured a bhikshu who went to this group of students who left and then started asking to the 200 bhikshus saying that, well, I feel the same. I don't like the teaching either.
像那个就一起那天在听说是网上有一个人就是准备
The other day,
他也想自杀
I heard that someone was ready to commit suicide, and then someone from some netizen noticed this person was going to commit suicide, and then he was really smart. He sent a message to him saying that I also want to commit suicide, and then they started chatting, and then they ended up chatting, and this person didn't commit suicide because of someone opened up his heart. Anyhow, it's just like that. This conjured bhikshu went to the 200 bhikshus and started saying that I really don't like the teaching given by Manjushri either. And halfway through, he asked this 200 bhikshus saying, well, is it that you only don't like to listen to the teaching given by Manjushri, or because you slandered, or because you used words to slander the teaching as well as Manjushri? And the 200 bhikshus said, no, we didn't do that at all. We only just left because we can't accept such teaching. And this conjured bhikshu started saying that, oh, that's wonderful, because you shouldn't do that even if you don't understand the teaching. So he started then giving the teaching by asking questions such as, where's your mind then? Do you find your mind has the color of blue, of red, of yellow? Does it have any shapes? Do you see anything solidly that existent? And then the 200 bhikshus all answered saying that, no, I can't find anything like that. That is my mind. And then at that time, the bhikshu continued to ask, saying that, in that case, do you see any perfect truth that is truly existence as well? And then the 200 bhikshus said, no, we don't see that either. And by asking all these questions, they then got enlightened, all 200 of them, not in front of Manjushri himself, but from in front of the conjured bhikshu of Manjushri. It is only through the discussion they felt that, well, the teaching given by Manjushri is indeed correct. And then all of them, the 200 bhikshus, then took off their clothing and then offered it to Manjushri as an offering. Just as nowadays in those concerts, how the fans would take off their shirts and then throw it in the air and so on. And if everyone offers like that to Manjushri, Manjushri would be swimming in the ocean of clothing. Shruti then asked them, saying, have you all got enlightened? What kind of attainment have you then received? The 200 bhikshu replied, saying that we have not attained anything. We have not received anything. In fact, there is nothing to attain. And Shruti realized that they are indeed all attained a realization. And then Shruti continued to ask, saying that, who taught you this teaching of mind, of taming the mind, or of watching the mind? And the 200 bhikshus replied, saying that, well, that question you could ask Manjushri. And Manjushri answered, yes, in relative truth, you have methods of watching the mind, but in the ultimate truth, there is no mind to watch and no watcher. So from the aspect that we're learning from here, in fact, it is non-arising, non-ceasing.
它
in
还是有
the
清净和不清净的
purity
这样
of
这个
in the
差别
perception of
就像那
purity.
个发护翻译的
But
那个发
in
生战
the
发生战争呢
relative
也是
truth,
这样的，这
there
个
are
法
still
界也不
different
生也
levels
不
of
曾坏灭，
understanding it based on
一
your
切
different
是不染
realization.
粗种常无垢啊，就是说这个
In
这个法
praise
界呢
of
这个它从
Dharmadhatu,
来
it
就
says
不
that
曾
on
不
the
灭，我们的
horizon
这个如来藏
is
呢
the
就是不
Dharmadhatu
生
and
不灭
will
的。
see
这个
will
如来
never
藏呢
cease
就是
it
在一
will.
切社会
At
中
all
从来
times
都是
without
没有这个
afflictions, stainless
被这个染污
through
过的。
beginning,
那
middle,
么
and
最
end.
初这个众
It
生
has
社会
never
也
been
好，中间
tinted
菩萨社会也好，最终
as
波陀社会的话呢，其实
a
这个
mundane being,
是超
as a
度者都会
bodhisattva,
被那
as
个
a
世间
Buddha.
的这
In
个法
fact, it
所
has
染
never
污
been
这个
tinted,
所染污。
never
所以
ever been tinted
所以
by
呢
all
我
the
们
relative
就是
dharma.
这个就是通过这个虚空来这个比喻，就是众生呢就是具有如来藏的道理呢，凡是非常有必
So
要
through the
就是
teaching
真
of
正
space or
通达它
metaphor
的
of
意义。
space, you'll be able to understand
接下
how
来就是讲
the
那个
Dharma,
光速啊，
the
那
Buddha
么这个
nature
刚才不是这个略
is,
所吧，略所是用虚
and
空
how it could
的这个比
reside
喻来
in
讲如来
the
藏。其实这个
mundane beings
这
as
个比喻
well.
还是这个如来这个报信论还是很好的。你们可能如果
I
听
really
到
feel
它
that
的
Uttaratantra Shastra is
内容
really
的话呢，
wonderful
应该
if you
是
can
会上
ever
瘾的。如果没
taste
有
just
听
a
到的
little
话
bit
呢，
of
就是
it,
什么大瞌睡
have
啊，
a
或者
little
是
bit
累啊，都
glimpse
会这
of
样。
the
那么下面呢，
teaching
就是
from
对分
this
五个方面，
text,
如法
you
这
will
个
feel
现
quite
现
excited and
生
really
灭相，
curious.
就生灭
But
之
of
理。
course, if you
然后发
don't,
界
you
呢，就
probably
是
feel
无色无
really
这
drowsy.
还有这个宣素
The
平等
next
之相。
one, it
然后呢，就
then
是
talks
突然这
about
个
how the
成宗会
Dharma
指的
is
自性不变之理，分五个方面，其中
detailed
的一个方面。
explanation of
那么首先是这样
unchangingness
的，这个如法呢，
throughout
虽
the
然
three
如来藏是
phases.
这个已经这个
Unchangingness
每个众生都居住的，它是这个像虚空一样的长生，就是恒常不灭的。但
So
是呢，在
in
有法，
fact,
我们有法
all
从
is
实度层面来讲呢，它还是
unchanging
先现有
and
这个生灭的。那这个是什么样
that
呢？
is from the
时间一切
ultimate
中空中自
perspective,
有
but
灭，
from the
如
relative
是
part,
无为界。
how is it
根等
then?
僧有灭。
How can you
那么
explain it
从
from the
我们这个
aspect
世
of
界
the
来讲的
elements?
话呢，首
And
先
then
是
it
从
says
七世
that
界开始说。那么七世界的
all the
开始
way
说的话
from
呢，那么这
the
个世间当
materialistic
中的一
world,
切
it
啊，就
says
是就
just
世间
as
当中的
at
所
all
有的这
times
个植物
worlds
也好，动
arise
物也好，
and
或者说是世间的我们
disintegrate
这
in
个
space. The
外界
sense
的，我们像七
the
世界来
senses
说，
arise
七
and
世界的
disintegrate
所有
in
的
the
这个
uncreated
一切的
expanse.
这种山河大地也
In
好，就
fact,
是
all
那么
the
一切的一切的话呢，
mountains, all the
实际上是就
rivers,
是这个
all the
无为的这
dharmas
个
that
虚
we
空
could
当中
perceive, all the
就是虚
objects
空
that
当
we
中的
can
话呢，
perceive,
刚开始呢，
they
就是它们
derive
就开始
from
这个
space
产
as
生，
well.
然后
Because
就
at the
是中间呢
beginning,
可能会就是现象上是存在一
that's
段
the
时间，
beginning, and in
安
the
住一
middle,
段时间。
they would
那最后
abide
的话
for
呢，
a
都
period
会
of time
毁
or
灭
stay
的。
for a
但
period of
毁灭
time,
的话呢，
and then
虚
at the
空它
end,
自己
it
虽
will
然在虚空
definitely
当中就是这些这个
cease.
生灭啊，就是一直
Just
生生灭
as
灭就是这
how
样的。
in
但是虚空它
the
自己呢，就
space
是有没有生灭呢？确实也是没有。虽然在虚空当中生灭，但是虚空
doesn't have
没有
any
这个生灭。
birth and death.
那同样的道理啊，
Although
就
all
是我
of
们
these
这
kind
个
of
像虚
phenomena
空
would
一般的
rise
这个
and
无为的这
die
种，就没有
in the
任何这
space,
个
but the
因缘
space
造作的
itself
这个
doesn't
如来
have
藏。
any
这
arising
个
or
如来
death
藏当
or
中的话
or
呢，实际
ceasing.
上是有这个有情这个众生的。
Just like
有情
the
众
space,
生的话呢，
this
那他
is
们的这
Buddha
个根
nature.
也好，界也好，云也好，所有的一切
The
的一切的话
sentient
呢，
beings
最开
have
始的
their
时候就是
faculties,
会有
have their
产生
ayatanas,
这个
have
众
their
生，不管是动物
skandhas,
也
and
好，
so
人
on,
类也好，就是刚
such
开
as
始呢，
human
就是有
beings,
些是开
animals
始，
at
有
the
些是乱
beginning.
生，有些是世生，就是各种这个
They
产生。
were
然后中间
born
可能
through
就是
different
这个
ways, such
还
as
是要会
eggs
遇
or
到
or
这个。那
as
最后的话呢，
babies
要
coming
毁
from
灭，
the
那
womb
就
of
是
the
最后
mother
毁
and
灭。
so on.
但是
But
虽然就是这些
after
众生呢，
abiding
就
or
是
staying in
生
this
灭
world
但
for a
是
period of
它
time, they
所
will
有的
die
这个如来
eventually.
藏呢，
There are
就像刚才
birth
虚
and
空一
death.
样，就是既没有生也没有灭啊，就是
But
这
the
个
nature
这个道理的话呢，就
that
是还是
resides in them, that is
很有
Buddha nature,
很有
does
很有
not
意思吧？
change
就
at
是
all,
我们
doesn't have
可能
any
很多人呢，就
arising
是以前的
or ceasing. I
就
believe
所谓的
majority
如来
of us
藏呢，
had
就是
never never
大家
really
可能
studied this
只要是
before.
佛教徒的话，大家都听过啊，就每个众生具有如来藏的回应，
To
都会说
the。
但是如来
Buddha,
藏到底
to
怎
the
么具足的
Buddhists,
话呢？
you probably
比
all
如说
heard the
你跟另
term
外一个道友
that
说，你说
is
如来
Buddha
藏
nature.
不是具足吗？如来藏具足的话呢，你说它是以
But if you
具
were
足
to
在
ask
身体
question
里还
to
是在
any
地
of the
或者
Buddhists
是他以
saying
他以
that,
什么方式
well,
来具足？
if
你给
you
我
think
用一个
Buddha
比喻
nature
来说明
exists in
一下
everyone,
啊。
then
那
can
这
you
样的话呢，你可以用
explain
虚
is the
空的
Buddha
比喻来
nature
说明。
existing
然后
outside
它
of the
在
body or
内在
inside
位，
our
或
body?
者是它是常
How
有的
is
还是
it
无常的？
existing?
它
Is it
是
permanent
什
or
么
is it
样的一个东西
impermanent?
的话呢，在这里面已经分
What
析
is it
得很好了
exactly?
表面上看呢，可能你们
But in
觉得
this
这些每一个
stanza,
词呢，
it
就是好像呢
is
非常简
it
单，就是应该好
explained
懂。
very
但是你如果再去观察的时候呢，好像不是那么
clearly.
好懂。 让你再去
Maybe
分析
this
的时候，
stanza
就
at
是
first
更
when you
更
read
难
it you
懂。所以
understand,
里
but
面的
then
这种内
when you
容，就
continue
是
to
这个
read it, you
佛经
probably
和
don't
这个
understand it
大
anymore.
的就是
That
他们
is
的这些金刚语呢，跟我们的实践的这种一般评
that
判的
is the
有些人
difference
的这
between the
个分
Vajra
裂的语言呢，
words
就的
given
确是
by
有很大的
masters,
差别。
given by the
我们可
noble
能实
ones,
践的一些语言呢，
to
刚开
the
始就是不管
mundane
是
beings
从思学
language,
方面的，还是国文
because
方面的，特别难懂。
the
一
mundane
旦
beings
动了以后
language
呢，就
could
尽杂
sounds
音。我们
very
为什么有些
difficult to
有
begin
些
with.
这个数的
They
话呢，
could
就
be
看了一遍以后呢，
filled
就不
with
用看，也不
lots
想看，
of
也看了
terms
也
and
没有
lots
没有
of
多大用。
different
但诸佛菩萨的这些文字
grammar
不是这
and
样
so
的。
on.
比如说
But
我们一个论点
later
的
on,
时候，
once you
讲
get
了
a
好几
hang
遍的
of
时候
it, you'll
还
be able to
想讲，
understand it
学了好几
anyhow.
遍的时候还想学，
But
听了好几遍
the
还想
the
听。
Vajra
原因是
words
什么呢？
that's
因为
given
这里
by
面
the great
还是有
masters
一种
and the
与
noble
众不
ones who
同的这种
realized
味道啊。如果我们
who
跟实践
who
的有一
attained
本书的话呢，
realization,
那
then
可能我也
their
不会
words
这
are
么讲。
completely
比如说我
different.
的
After
像大圆
you
满
read
前
it
行和入
once,
性轮
you
子
want
一
to
辈子
read
讲
it
了好多
again,
遍
you
啊。
want to
如
study
果我是一
again
个
and
实
again.
践的那个，比如说小学1年级的这个课也好，或者是这边的话，除非是我就每次的
Words of my perfect teacher, for example.
除此之外，我都可能强迫也不会这样的。但是我每次这样的时候，我非常欢喜，我也并没有像是我肯定
Words
会
of my
懂，我
perfect
每次像是我可能里面有很多
teacher,
道
for
理不懂。
example. In
所以
fact,
这方面
I've
可能
studied
有
it for many,
稍微
many
有
times.
这个修正和
But
经
if
验
it
的人
were
就这
just
样
some
说了，
kind of
以后
teachings
呢
from
可能
first
会有
grade
一
or
些概率。
second grade, I would never want
那
to
么这样的
repeat
话
it again and
在
again.
这里呢，就是也说是这个实践的一切呢，就是空中
So
生
that's
灭
the
但是
power
呢
of the
就是
words
这个虚
coming
空呢
from
就
the
是没有
realized
生灭的。
ones.
那这个一切众生呢，就
So
是在如来藏
it
这
is
个
it just says
界当
that
中呢，就生灭，但是它
just
自
as
己
all
的话呢
time
就
and
是没有
world
生灭。
arise and
这个呢，就是我们那天应用的
all
那
the
个
things in this world
就是
they
见
would
会的
arise
这个
and
什么
cease
大
in the
乘法
space,
界
but
无
the
差别论
the
呢，就
space
是也非
itself
常
does
相
not
同。好像里面
cease.
我找到有很多比较相同的，这个里面也是讲
I
这个如
found
一
lots
切
of
世界以
teachings that's
虚
very
空
similar
契机
in
啊，
the
这个
Mahayana
实践呢就是
Dharma
依靠
without
这个虚空
distinction
而这个契
sutra
机的。
or Shastra.
然后那个
It says that
诸
just
根
as
呢，就是
universe
也如
arise
是，就
and
是无以
disintegrate in
未
space,
生灭
the
啊，就
same
是
is
那
with the
么
senses
这个跟这个
which
宋词呢还
arise
是很
and
多都是比
disintegrate
较
in
相
the
同的，就是一
uncreated
切根的
space.
话呢，就是
This one
也
is
是一
very
样
similar
的，就
to our
是
stanza,
那么
isn't
就是
it?
依靠这
In
个
fact,
无为
all the
无为
ceasing,
指
all
的
the
是应该
rising
是
and the
这个
ceasing,
如来藏啊，就是无为的这个如来藏呢，就是可以这
that
个
is
生灭啊，就是这样的话呢，
that
实际上就是这个无为如来藏的这种生灭呢，就是确实也是非
that
常
is
这
in the
个
uncreated
就是
space.
有这样的意义。当然这个
Uncreated
道理呢，我刚才
here
讲的一样，就
means
是有
or
些地方
uncreated
确实
space
是比
that
较这个
over
圣
here
王啊，
it
就
in
是
fact it means the
尤其
Buddha
是
nature.
就是无生无灭也好就是尤其是无生无灭啊，就是
Birthlessness,
无生无灭
deathlessness,
就是在如来藏本体当中呢，像虚空一
no
样无
birth,
生无灭
no death,
这个道理呢，还是比
just
较
as
比较难懂的。
the
也
Buddha
是好像
nature,
在
just
那个
like
文
the
殊菩萨传还
space.
是在哪个里面《道宝积经》里
I
面
think
也
in
是
the
这样的，我不知道以前
great
讲过没有。就是有一次
Great
那个文
Jewel
殊菩
Heap
萨跟
Sutra
一
as
个
well
天
as
天人呢
Manjushri's
就开始这
biography,
个研讨
where
嘛，就
it
是
told
研
the
讨的时候
story
呢，
that
就讲一
Manjushri
些无
had
生无
this
灭的非常
discussion
深
with
沉
a
的法。
celestial
那
being.
个时候呢，就是
He
有500个
started
比丘啊500
giving the
个比丘
teaching
呢，就是
of
旁边这个
the
倾倒
Dharma
他的
of
这个无生无灭的
non-arising
这
and
个
non-ceasing.
这种生沉的东
500
西。
bhikshus
这个时候呢，
around,
就这
they
500
heard
个
the
比丘呢，可
teaching
能
of
就像我们现在
this
一样的，就是现在有些
supreme
年轻人
teaching
哈，
of
即使给几百个
emptiness,
就是有
and
时候同
right
样的一
away
种见解。
the
那么
500
他们呢，就
bhikshus
是对这个无生无灭的这
all
个法
had
实在是借助不了了，就是他
the
们就非常
same
的摄法，摄法以后呢，
understanding
就是后来就堕
and
入这
it
个地
all
狱
had
了。
the same
然后这个时
feeling
候呢，就是这
where
个舍
they
利子
felt
就
that
开始
this
这
is
个
not the
怪这个
teaching,
文殊
the
菩
the
萨
correct
不应
Dharma.
该这样
And
传
by
不经
having
观察
that
就是一
wrong
生
view,
念这样传
they
无
were
生
all
无灭的
born
空心法。
into
你看现在
the
这么多
hell
比丘都
realm
已经堕落
because
了，
of
就
the
是
wrong
你
view.
这个传错了，你不
Then
应该
someone
传这样的
criticized the
法。后来呢，
Manjushri, saying that
就
you
是文
shouldn't
殊菩
have
萨
given
这
this
个也讲了，
profound
就
teaching
是
to the
其实我
500 bhikshus who
一
were
方面讲呢
not
这个
ready
这
to
种色污
receive
灭的
such
话呢 就是也没
profound
有什么
teaching of
降到无色无灭
emptiness.
的时
See,
候呢
now
就真正
because
的
of
是
your
上当
teaching,
没有什
they
么
were
堕落
all
的
then
这个
falling
就是因为
into
这个堕
the
落本
hell
来都是
realm.
不产生
And
的
then
这个
Manjushri
是你
said
不用
that,
担心的
in fact,
另一
in
方面
the
的话呢
truth, in the
实
ultimate
际上
truth, there
我
is
现
no
在这个
falling
降这个
into
无色无
the
灭的
hell
话虽
realm.
然这个个别可能苾芻已经堕落了但是我
So
如
you don't
果
have to
降另外一
worry.
个法
That's
就是我
my
降什么这
that's
个供
the
养
first
啊
point.
就
The
是不
second
和洒
point
脱
is
当中
that
呢就是让他
in
们心里自
fact
量啊那这样的话结果是什么样呢结果
by
呢
listening
就
to
是
this
他们这些
teaching that
堕
they
落的
cannot
这
re,
个就是
accept
苾芻的话呢虽然堕落但是呢
temporarily
就是中间就是有这个解脱解脱以后的话呢就是他
they
们再
will
修
still
行
be
呢
able
就是很快
to
都会得到解脱的
get liberated very quickly.
虽然
When
他
I
们没有堕落，但是他们呢
watched
在
for
这个
when
内
I
当中得的时间是更长的
observed
所
their
以
mind
时候呢
stream,
有必要
if I
降
were
生
to
神的
let
法
them
即使
take
暂时他
their
们接受不
time
了
to
我们现在降
receive
法
the
的时候有时候
teaching when
就
they're
接受
ready,
不了就是中间废棒
that
像中
is
观的
going
时
to
候呢
take
有时
them
候
a
中间
much
也是
longer
就
period
接
of
受不了
time
就是可能有一些真
to
的神仙
attain
见了堕落
liberation.
这样的但实际上呢就按照文殊菩萨的观点的
So
话呢
there are
让他
people
堕
who
落就堕
cannot
落吧就没
accept
事
such
堕的
teaching,
话那就是那么
and
他接
maybe
触
they'll
你是
have
接触
wrong
的也快就是
ideas
比我
and
们就是
wrong
没有堕
perception
落
of
的
the
就是
profound
经常
Dharma,
的那种
and
像蛮
maybe
心
they'll
病一
fall
样
into
的
a
一
hell
直
realm
这个
because of
死也
that.
死不了的就是那种人呢好像就
But
不
still,
是不是很
by
好在人
doing
会里面
so,
解脱也
it
解脱不了
plants
就
a
多也
great
多不
seed
了
for
不
them
如呢
to
还是
attain
这个
liberation much faster
就
in
是
this
长痛不如
samsara.
短痛是吧
Just like
就
a
看不到这个
chronic
比喻可能不一
disease
定
is
就是
difficult to
不一定
cure, but
就适
if
合
you
但
could
不管
make
怎么
it
样
rather
他堕落
quite
的话呢
acute,
他就很快
then
就会得
maybe
到这个
they'll
解脱
get
说到这里
ill
的时候呢
and
佛陀呢就是也是赞叹就是文殊
suffer
菩萨
quite a
就文
bit
殊菩
very
萨
temporarily,
就是
but
说
they'll
是这
get
个
well
赞
soon
叹
as
他
well.
就是说是
And
你
that's the
你说的
metaphor
对
I
就是
thought
应
of.
该传这个圣善的法就这样一和
By
呢
explaining
就
that,
即使
and
他们
all
堕
the
落
other
呢就
people
很快
started
获得
saying
解
that
脱所以有时候
that's
呢
really
我们这
great. You
个
should have
这
really
样的这
taught
种
the
这个如
teaching
来
to
藏
the
法也好这
500
个
bhikshus.
大乘空性神
So
圣法门也
the
好
teaching
真正空
of
性法门
Buddha
也好
nature
这
as
些
well
法
as
呢
the teaching on the
就表面上看呢
emptiness,
就是确实是这个非常深奥甚至有些人呢就是接受不了
it
现
is
在也
quite
是这样的
profound,
就是我们
and
讲个一
lots
些
of
人
people
天法
cannot accept it,
那就有
cannot
很多人都
understand
就
it
容易
and
接受
accept
就是
it.
这样就很这个很
The
开心尤
teachings
其是
of
积累一些
human
福
realm
德啊
and how to
这个话
attain
就
God
这样
realm
这个福
is
德的
rather
话
quite
呢就
popular
会
in our
生生
world,
世世
such
就
as
变
how
成
to
有财富的
accumulate
人
merit,
就是
how to
钱就
then
是永这个
become a
用不
wealthy
完的这个金
people,
钱
a
你会
wealthy
应有
person for
就
lifetimes
应
to
有尽
come,
有那
how
就很开
to
心的然后你
attain
这样
the
这样修行的话呢你
abundant
丈夫
wealth
就
that
非
you'll
常非
never
常
be
漂亮
able
他们
to
也很想然后一
you'll
说
never
一
be
切
able
法都是
to
空性一切法都是
finish
很清净
using,
的话
how
大
you
家有
could
点
be
这个
reborn as a
接受
really
不了
beautiful
但实
person,
际上呢
and
我
so
们稍
on.
微有
This
一
kind
点
of
智慧
teaching
的
is
人呢
rather very
真正
popular.
对王法的
But
实
the
相上看
teaching
的时
that
候呢
is on
确
the
实参与
profound
到的是就是
emptiness,
空性的
such
就
profound
是
Dharma
抓不到这个其
is
他的
very
事上
difficult
在
to
民间当中的
accept
话
for
呢虽然
others at
存
this
在但是
point.
这些存在
But
呢
this
也
is
是入
still
门无法
very
这个就是入
important
这个洋洋
because
一样
once you
的
realize
就
that,
实
you'll
际
be
上
able
呢
to see
就是
how
没有
everything in
什么
this
真实
world
的
is
这个
just
自
like
信
illusion,
仅此而
just
已
like a
就这一
dream.
点我们很多
And
人对
that's
人生
all.
有一
They're
点
just
感
like
悟
a
的人他们都不明
mirage.
白所以这
There's
是
no
那个
solid existence
要降到
of
什么呢？就是降到这
anything in
个
this world.
在
For
世俗
people
当
with
中有
wisdom,
分
and
别
they'll
的这个道
definitely
理呢，就是
be
这样
able
讲
to
的。然后这
contemplate
个
and
法界当
accept
中的
such
无灭
teaching.
的道理就是法界当
And
中无
next
灭
one,
的
we
道
talk
理呢，
about
它
the
这里是
unceasing,
这样
why
讲
it is
的，就是
unceasing
说，
in the Dhammadhatu.
那是怎么讲的呢？就是说虚空啊，就是未曾为诸
Well,
诸
space
佛
is
所
never
焚
burnt
毁
by
如
fires.
是自不为
Likewise, this
四
Dharmadhatu
病
is not
老
burnt
口
by
焚
the
烧
fires
它
of
这里
death,
呢，就是
sickness,
说这
and
个像我们
aging.
时间当中的这个
Over
无为
here,
法
it
的
says
话
that
就
all the
是有各
compounded
种这个
things
火
in
呢就
our
会
world
会焚烧的，
can
但
be
是这个
burnt,
虚空呢，就是
but
合适也
space
是不会
cannot
这
be
个焚
burnt.
烧的就是我们这个时间当中的话呢，就是有这
In
个
our world,
这个
there
三种
are
火就是那么
three
这
types of
这三
fire.
种火的话呢，就是什么这个摩羯火啊、地
There are
狱
the
火啊、
fire
地狱
at the
火啊，
end
还
of
有这个
time,
自信，自信
fire
火
of
是一般
hell,
的普通
and
火
a。natural
那
or
么这些火呢，
over
就是
here it
经
means
常会这
ordinary
个焚
fire.
烧一些这个
So
生
the
命。
three
可
types
是
of
这个虚
fire.
空呢，
These three
这
types of
虚
fire
空呢，
can
就是没有
burn
这
everything in
个
our
被
world,
火烧的
but
就我们
space
从
can
来
never be
不会说
burnt.
这个房子被火
We can never really. You can say that, okay, the house got burned down, this person was burned, the clothing got burned, but you can never really say that, oh, my space got burned. Well, if that really happens, if the space is really got burned, then it will be spaceless. Then you cannot enter such a spaceless place, isn't it? And there's no such thing like that. Doesn't matter how big the fire you lit, you cannot burn space. Similarly,
在轮回当中的死也好，
In fact,
地也
the
好，牢
sentient
也好，
beings
那
are
么这
burned
个
by
呢
three
火呢
fires.
会这个
That is
焚
the
烧啊，
fire of
它这个
death
比喻
and
成这个
fire
死亡的
of
这个火呢，就是像魔戒火一样的。
fire of
像硬
death
的火呢，就
is
是地狱火一
similar
样的。
to
那么
the
就是
is
衰老
in
的这个
accordance
火
with
呢，
the
就是自
fire
性火。
at the
那
end
么
of
这些
dies
火呢，就是对我们
end
的
of
这个
time
如
and
来藏，
fire
就是如来
of
藏呢，就是就
illness
像
or
石头一
fire
样
of
的，从来都
sickness
是不会
fire of
不会
sickness
这
it
个烧坏
corresponds
的
to the
啊，
fire
就
of
是这
hell
个呢，
and
就一直是永远也是不会这个会坏的。就是这个道理的话呢，就是大家也
fire
应该
of
记住
hell
就是我们这个人呢，
or
就是可能
fire
某
of
个人也好，某
aging
个这个动物也
corresponds
好，他
to
们
the
呢
natural
也有
fire.
这个生老死病啊，就是有生老死病。
Not
但
only
是我们
human
如来
beings, the
藏呢，
animals
就是
also
有没有
have
啊，就
such
今天我
birth,
的这个
death,
如来藏病呢，
sickness,
就没办
and
法了啊，我这个如来
aging.
藏
But
老了，
does
就是就
Buddha
万年
nature
不了，
have
就
all
白发
those
苍苍
four
的。
stages as
有没
well?
有这样说
No,
法？
you
就是没
cannot
有
say
啊，
that,
就是
oh,
所以
my Buddha
一般我
nature is
们
getting
讲这
old,
个
my Buddha nature
终
got
身
some
有这
gray
个生
hair,
老死病，但
and
是
my
这个
Buddha
活
nature
期
is,
呢，
is
确实是没
ill
有的。
these
这些
these
比喻呢，
days.
应
You
该
cannot say
应该
that.
就是
So
也
this
你要
kind
就
of
是知道，就
metaphor
是如
that
果我
is
们
given
知
over
道
here
这
is
些道理
quite
的时候
crucial
呢，
to understand.
就可
Once you
能
understand
怎么讲啊，
these
就是
profound meanings
即
behind
使
the
你闻思的
metaphors,
非常短短的这个时间呢，但是呢，你
then
得到的
even
这
if you
个
only
利益呢，
studied
就
for a
是非
very
常
short
大
period
的
of
啊，就
time,
是
the benefit
就
you
除
can
药经
receive
当
from
中就是
such
说这
teaching
个
is
虽复苏
quite
百岁，不知
great.
生灭时，不入一日中，
Just
什么
as
消了生死
it is
色。
stated in
就是说，意思就是说，
Uttaratantra
这
Sutra,
个
it says
如果
that
一个
one
人呢，
who
就是
lives
活了
to
100
100
这个
years
岁，
old
但是
and
呢，你
never
不懂
knows
这
the
个生
nature
死
of
的这
birth
些
and
道
the
理啊，就是
cessation
不懂生死的道理。
is
那这个
inferior
人呢，
to
不
one
如
who
这
just
个
lives
一
for
日当
one
中
day
只活了一
but
天，
realized
但
the
是你
nature
懂
of
到了这
birth
个生
and
灭
the
之事。
cessation.
就这个是从人生的这个价值上讲的话呢，确实是
From the aspect of
还
the
是
value of
得到这
life,
个神圣的这些
I
道理
think
是很有必要的。
by
古人也说这
understanding
个
the
早闻
profound
早闻道
teaching
就是
of
夕死已是晚
truth,
就如果
by
我们
understanding
早
the
一点
truth
就是
is
闻到这个真理
extremely
的话呢，
important,
那什么时候就是即便是
extremely
今天晚
important
上离开
despite
的
how
话呢，
long
也
you
是
could
值得的。
live.
实践当中
As
也有这样的
according
说
to
法，
Confucius,
就
he
这样的
said
话
that
呢，就是我们的这个
if
虚
you
空呢
could
就是
learn
不
the
会被
truth
火烧的。
in the
但是
morning,
呢，
then you
这
can
个
die in
实
the
践的
evening
这种
without
无为
any
法呢，就是
regrets.
可以被火烧的。那么如来藏呢，不会被火烧的。那么这个
So
火呢，
the
就是前面
conditioned
讲的有一些是
Dharma can be
就
burned by
檀香
fire,
火
but the
就是
unconditioned
燃
Dharma
檀
cannot
火
be
还有地狱
burnt.
火、魔界火。我们这里自性
Over
火
here,
的
it
话
talks
呢，
about
就是
three
在我们
kinds of
实践当中
fire,
也
such
是
as
有时候是非
fire
常
of
这
end
个
of
可怕
time,
的。
fire of
所以就
hell,
我看
and
到那个
natural or
巴西
ordinary
在
fire.
那个地方就发
Without
生了
knowing
特
the
别
other
严
two
重的
kinds of
火灾
fire, at least
已经
we know
有
how
16
ordinary
有
fire
16
could
天了，亚
create
马逊森林就
detrimental
是这个亚马逊森林呢，一
consequences,
般
just
很
as
多人
the
就是称
fire
为
that
是
is
它是这个地球的
the
这个
fire that
地球之
is
肺啊，就是
burning
有这个
currently
如果
in
这个
Brazil
森
in
林
the
里面
Amazons.
就是
Amazon
就是
forest
就
is
会
the
坏，就是
lung
可以说
of
是烧
Earth,
坏的话，那就是对整个
the
地
lung
球
of
整
Mother
个宇
Earth.
宙还是影
And
响
if
影
the
响非常大。但是呢，
and
因为他
if
们国内
this
的这个
forest
土地的这种
is
控制也好，就是
burnt,
现在包括
it
对他
could
们的这个
create
军事呢，
detrimental
就有下面就
consequences
有很多
towards
的
the
这个
whole
抗议，反正各种各
the
样的音
whole
乐剧的
world,
话
the
呢，
whole
那最近
earth.
就会看到这
But
个
because
抗
of
议也
different
是比较
conflicts
可怕的。
happening
当然
in
这个
the
比喻呢，
country
无法
of
比喻我
Brazil,
们的魔界和那个地狱
there's
火那
this
更没办
great
法比喻。
fire that's
那么这样的
happening
这种
in
自然界或
Brazil
者说自
now
性
that's
火的
burning
严重
this
性呢，
most
就是大家
important
也
one of
可
the
以
most
再看一
important
下。
forest. And I want to show you a clip of that fire.
巴西秘鲁与玻利维亚交界处的亚马孙地区为火灾重灾区，火势较集中的地区位于巴西的朗多尼亚州、马托格罗索州和亚马孙州以及玻利维亚境内。目前，大火已造成至少50万公顷的森林被毁。因为起火地区正处于气候最干旱的时期，更是加剧了火势的蔓延。亚马孙雨林位于南美洲亚马孙盆地，雨林面积达550万平方公里，其中60%位于巴 巴西境内。亚马孙雨林对全球气候和生态平衡都起着举足轻重的作用。巴西国家空间研究院20号发布的监控数据显示，今年以来，巴西亚马孙热带雨林的火情数量累计达72843起，比2018年同期上涨了83%，创下自2013年有记录以来最高值。目前，世界各地网民已在社交媒体上发起了为亚马孙祈祷的呼吁，要求国际社会关注亚马孙森林大火的形势，并拯救人类的地球之肺。
拯救人类的地球之肺。
To save the lung of the human race.
大家也可以就经常
it is said in the news. I think we should then also dedicate merit towards this disaster, this fire, so that it could pacify such disasters happening. Previously, United States take its country as a protector of the world, but nowadays I think every country takes themselves as the most important instead. In Asia, in Europe, in the America, it is happening like that. According to Buddhism, I think all the chaos that's happening nowadays is very much connected to the collective karma of all the sentient beings. But I think without having to distinguish where or who you are, where you come from or who you are, you should then dedicate merit towards all the sentient beings, towards the peace and harmony of the world, to pacify the fire, to pacify the anger, the fire of anger. And sometimes it is because of the anger of the inner fire of anger, it could cause the external fire to blaze. Therefore, I really hope that everyone could supplicate and pray and dedicate merit to such disasters that's happening in the world. And then the next part, it talks about detailed explanation of interdependent origination and explanation of the way generation takes place by combining example and its meaning and giving the examples. So this part talks about the four great elements and the relationship with how the four elements reside within us and how it works within us as well. So it says that earth rests upon water and water upon wind. Wind fully rests on space. Space does not rest upon any of the elements of wind, water, or fire. In fact, all of our world is dependent on the earth, and the earth upon water and water upon wind. And any so all these kind of elements, according to Abhidharma, I think we mentioned it earlier as well, it says that in Abhidharma that in fact earth is dependent on water, because at the beginning when the world was forming, the wind first is turning in the space and then started raining, which is water, and then in the rain there's minerals that created earth. That is described in Abhidharma. But as all the element is dependent on the space, such as wind is dependent on space, and then water dependent on wind, and earth dependent on water, then everything is really coming from space. We cannot see wind, but wind is definitely a power, an energy. So the earth is dependent on space, but space is not dependent on earth. In cosmology, and lots of scientists talk about the Big Bang Theory. Lots of scientists talk about this theory that was first proposed by a Belgian scientist back in the 19th century, back in last century, 20th century. And some scientists, based on that theory, also then calculated and said that this world had the first Big Bang back in 18.3 billion years ago.
应该不是这样的。
But this is not
并不是这样
archaeology. You
包
cannot
括
find
这个
evidence
现在其他
about
宗教的就
the
有
Big
些
Bang,
说法的
and
话呢，其
you
他宗教有
cannot
些说法的
really
话，对这个世界形
completely
成的话
rely
呢
on
他们也觉
the,
得是他
on
们的
such
这个比
theories.
如说什么神啊，就是他们是怎么创造世界的时候呢，那也跟这个
Different
地主什么
people
这个宇
from
宙大
different
爆炸
religions,
结
they
合起来
have
就
their
有一些这个
opinions and
就
they have
是
their
来说 但
ideas
是
of
这样
how
说可
this
能也
world
是
is
不一定
started.
是非常合理的。其
And
实
there are
我
people
们的这个
who
依主观的话呢
are
佛教的
religious
说
at the
法呢
same
应该是
time
非常
believe in
合理的
scientific
就是这个
research and
这
said
个
that
我们
they
也可以
both
看得出来，
believe
这个
in
现在
religious
这个到
aspect
今
of the
天
opinion
就是
as
我
well
们的这
as
个依
the
主观是依靠
scientists.
这一句话来的话呢，也是非常这个可以的。其实这个
In
呢，
fact,
就
our
是也是是那
the
个
beginning of
我们
our
的
cosmos, or
什么
when
就
we
是有
talk
很多的
about
这
how
个
our,
佛经当
our
中也
world
是
is
有
built
这
upon,
个
this
同样的这
stanza
个说明呢，
explains
就是
completely.
什么那个大基金里面呢，就是也是这样的，就是什
According
么大地就
to
是一月岁结柱，然后大岁呢就是一
According
月这个
to
风结柱，然后大风呢就是一月虚空
Mahasamgata
柱啊，
Sutra,
就
it
是
says that
有这个其实这个
just
来源
as
的话呢，
earth
就是应
rests
该是
upon
这个
water,
大基
water
金
upon
当中
air,
的，
air
它
upon
是这
space,
个
but space has
虚
no
空呢，就
basis
是
of resting.
就是依靠什么呢？就是依靠
Earth
这
in
个
nature has
虚
no
空无有
basis
所
of
住
resting
啊，就无
either,
有所
but
住，
only
它
has
之
the
间的这
aim
个
of
差别。
resting
其实这
upon
是
something.
弥勒菩萨的这个说法，但是弥勒菩萨的这个说法呢，也是在这个大基金里面就是有。大基金里
In
面呢，
fact,
就是专
this
门有一个
teaching
虚空
is
藏菩萨的
given,
这个
Uttaratantra
虚空菩萨
Shastra is
就是
given
虚空藏菩萨经
by
其实这里面就是讲了很多的 就我们
Lord
这个
Maitreya,
如来
but
藏啊，就是
the
通过
teaching is
虚空来比喻的这个
in
道理啊，
exact
就是讲的比较
correspondence
这个细致的，
to
就是所以我们
the
其实有必要呢，
Mahayana and
就是对这个
Mahasamgata
如来藏
Sutra.
法门呢，就是在这个大基金当中的这个第一品就是陀罗尼这个自在陀罗尼自在
This
王，
is
就是这一品当中也有一部
recorded
分，
in the
但是最
first
最重要
chapter
的
that
呢
is
就
a
是这个虚
numinous
空藏就是虚空藏品。那么这个虚空藏品
Dharani
的话呢，
chapter.
就是也有单义
Also,
的，
it
就是
is
也有这个合
included
义的
in
啊
the
就是这个
space
以
chapter,
后方面
or
的时候呢，我们可能也要看一下，就是这
in
个
fact, these
虚
two
空跟这
texts,
个大地之
there
间的关
are
系
the
是
ones
什么样
that is
如来藏跟我们的
included in
内心这
combination
个
of
世界之间
sutra
的这个
or
关系是怎么样
translated
这一点
separately.
就是
So it has
很
different
重要
versions
的，
as
所
well.
以这个教程
This
呢，就是我们
this
在
verse
其
is
他的
in
一
fact
些
quite
论
important
点当
because
中呢，
then
就是
through
经常
this
引用啊，就是
teaching
包括
you'll
什
be
么
able
大
to
圆
see
满
how this
奇迹
world
学也
is,
好，七宝藏也
how
好，
this
很
world
多
works,
就是前辈大德们的话呢，就是他们
to
经常引
understand
用。
more
所以我们这
detailedly
个
about how
法
this
师也好，辅导
works.
员的话呢，在这样的过程当中，每一部论呢，就是有一些重要的这
In
个
fact, this
这
stanza
些
is
道理啊，
so
就这些重要
famous,
的
it
道理
is
呢，应该重点提出来，
quoted
不
in
然
lots
我
of
们
the
一部论
Tantra
点全部都
texts
是一
as
模一
well.
样的话，说明呢，
I
我
think
们对这部论点就是没有这个
we
就
should
是
try to memorize
就
and
完全明白，就是
recite
所以我
the
们经常一定要
stanzas. That's
不
very
管是
important
背
in
诵也
each
好，就是
of
大
the
家平
texts
时
that
这个
we
辅导理
study.
解的时候呢，就是
And
每一部
the
论点当
stanzas
中
that
就是非
made
常
most
重要的，就是平
difference
时我们
to
在
you.
日常生活当中也好，修行当中
Otherwise, you're just
非常有
studying
这个
everything
实用性的。
in a
这
way
些
that
这些教程
none of them
一定要
made some
大家
special
要背
impact to
大
you.
家要
That
背
is not
所以这个
correct.
呢
So I
应该
really
大家
hope
都
that
是
you
非
could
常熟
memorize
悉
some
的
of the
啊，这
stanzas,
个
especially
三
this
神
one,
呐
which
漏
is
学了
very important.
就是这个我们平时这个校正的话呢，就是也是很重要的，就是大家要这个好好的这个大声
The
记好。
verses that we
那么
quote
这
is
是这个
quite important to
讲到
remember.
是它的
So
比
we
喻
should
啊，就是
then
比喻
make a
是这
special
样的。
note in front of them so that
那
we
这个
can
意
come
义
back
上
to
面
it
的话
again
呢
and
就
again.
是如是啊，就是云界更
Then the
一
next
语夜
one
烦然后以后呢就是
talks
分常
about
非理之所以，非理作
likewise
以者呢
skandhas,
依存清净
elements,
性
and
行者
senses.
自性法不注意一切。下面从意义上讲的话呢，那同样的道理就是我们讲的这
The
个无蕴，
improper
还有
conceptual
呢就是十
activities
八界，然后从这里
fully
面说的是
abide
根，就是实际上是这个六根和六
rest
性
upon
总共有12处。
the
那
nature
么
of mind.
12
In
处
fact,
的
over
所
here
有
it
的
talks
这些
about
有漏法的话
it
呢，它是
has
属于一
the
些然物
12
法。但
ayatanas
是这些
and
这个然物法呢，
the
就像我
18
们刚才呢，
dhatus
就是
and 5
前面
skandhas
就
and
是
so on.
就是
All
什
of
么
those are
前面
the
讲的这
polluted
地呢就是
dharma.
一与这个岁啊，就是地大一与这个岁大一样的。
As previously we talked about how the earth rely
全部都是靠这个
upon
业和
the
烦恼
water
在
and
这
water
啊，
upon
就是这个
wind.
地界色
From here, we can then also understand the 5 skandhas and 12 ayatanas and 18 dhatus are all relying on the karma and afflictions, the karma such as the good karma, bad karma, and neutral karma, as well as the afflictions. And how about and what are the karmas and afflictions rely upon? The karmas and afflictions rely upon the improper conceptual activities. So what is improper conceptual activity then? Improper conceptual activities are the kind of thoughts that are the wrong concepts, such as the truth of impermanence. You take the truth of impermanence as permanent. You take the suffering as joy, and so on. All of those are the wrong views, or the kind of perverted views. And how about this kind of improper conceptual activity? Where does this rely upon? It relies upon this clear and pure mind, this luminous nature of mind. The noble ones, they do not rely on any of the defilement, yet they rely on the luminous nature of mind. But how about the mundane beings? The mundane beings that's full of afflictions and so on, they rely on such kind of improper conceptual activity. But the improper conceptual activity rely upon this luminous nature of mind as well. This luminous nature of mind is not based on any of these adventitious phenomena. It is clear, it is pure, and it is unchanging, it is uncreated. The nature of mind does not abide on anything, it is not based upon anything. This kind of luminous nature of mind is not based upon any of the previous adventitious phenomena, such as karma, such as affliction, such as improper conceptual activity. Just like how space is not based on earth, fire, or water, the luminous mind is not based upon the improper conceptual mind or the karma or affliction. It is the same thing. I think lots of people do not understand how mind relates to Buddha Dharma, Buddha nature. And when you ask about them, to explain further about Buddha nature, then sometimes they would say that, well, Buddha nature is permanent, sometimes they say it's impermanent. They would feel that they are very cloudy, very drowsy in terms of answering such a question. They feel that mind, Buddha nature, Tathagata-garbha, and the nature of mind, all of these kind of terms really makes them feel more and more confused. So by studying this text, you'll be able to have an understanding of what Buddha nature is. You'll be able to see that our mind itself is a luminous nature and is of luminous nature, and it is uncreated, it is not conditioned. So using the metaphor of space and water and earth and fire, I think it is really the best. In our 21st century, we can still explain the law of cosmology with this stanza. after 2000 years
因和愿的
of
话呢，并不是我们平常
this
所讲到
teaching.
的这个能生所生的这个因缘呐。
The
就
cause
像
and
是
condition
我们
is
在
not
这
the
个
causal
蒙中
condition
就是
of
蒙中只是看到的这个发
of
生的，
causes
就是
and
很多实际上
fruition.
是蒙
It
中
doesn't
没有
mean
这
that you
些
have a
个
cause
真
and
正
then you
的
have a
法。
fruition.
同
That's
样的，
not
这些
how
因
it
缘的
is
话呢，就是也是
explained. In
一种
fact,
这
what
个
it
驾驭
means is that
也
in a
也是
dream,
入幻
when
的一
you
种
see something
道理来推
arise,
这个案例。就是除此之外，
the
真正有一
phenomena
个实
that
相的这个能
appears,
所
in
以不
fact,
在
is
能
still
所说的话
dreamlike,
呢，
and
这也是实
it
际
is
上是不
still
合
a
理的。
dream and it's illusion-like.
在下面呢就是讲一下，所以这个法呢，就是我希望，因为我的这
So
个时间有限吧，对吧？就是就
with my
我就
limited
这样的话呢，
time
就
in the
是
class,
也就讲这么多。但是如果
I'll
你跟
just
着的
give
话呢，就
you
是
this
应
much
该
of
就是
teaching,
就基本上
this
知道
much of
啊，这个
teaching.
弥勒菩萨
But
的
for
这个
those
意
of
应
you
该是
with
这样
sharp
的。
faculty
内
and who
在
are
的世界应
diligent,
该这
then
样的，
you should be
外在
able
的
to
这个世界
understand
应该
that
是这样
the
的。
external
就是
phenomena
原来
and my inner
就是
phenomena
2500多
are
年前的这
just
些
like
教育啊，
that.
就
The
那个时候
teaching
我
that's
们人
given
类
by
对宇宙观的
2,500
话，
years
对
ago,
内心观的话
the
呢，就是很多地
noble
方是比
one
较
had
柔软。
already
那哇，就是这样的话，
understood
就应该
the
是大概念
cosmology
就
and
就
the
知道
truth.
就原来是通
When
过这
the
个外面的
majority
这
of
种能
mundane
因
beings
素
are
以
still
及
very
世界
much
来，
confused.
其
They have
实
no idea about
就
how
是
this
也
world
通达我
works.
们这个内在的这个世界啊，就内在的世界。
So through the external
那么彼
phenomena,
等之
you
这
can
个对应呢
understand your inner
当知
phenomena
就
as
是
well.
那么下面就
From
是
the
这两个
external
对应，
world,
这个
you
就比
can
较
then
简单。
see
应该
how
知
it
道这
corresponds
个
to your inner
就是
world.
就是犹如地一切云解处啊，就是云
And
云
then the
中
next
界。
one, the
然后当
skandhas,
知这个
entrances,
入
and
水
elements
界
are
由
to
情
be
业
known
烦恼，
as
然非
resembling
你
earth,
做一次
karma, and the
观
mental
入
poisons
风
of
之
being
界
should be
自心
in
入虚火不
visaged
应
as the water
这里呢，
element
就
in
我们
proper
现在应该
conceptual
知道，就
activity
是我们
is
前面不
viewed
是
as
讲那
being
个
similar to the
地论
element
啊，
of
就是
wind.
地论。
Mind's nature
那么
as
这
the
个地
element
论
of
的话呢，
space
就
that
是
has no
实际上
ground
是依
and
靠
no
这个
place
随
to
论
abide.
而这个形成的。同样的道理呢，我们的这个
Just
无
as
影啊、
how
十
the
二处啊，还
how
有这
the
个十
wheel
八界
of
等等，这
earth
些的话呢，就是
is
来自于这个烦恼
a
啊，就一
result
切云
of
解处。
water
那么当指这个
wheel
碎
of
界就是
water
这两个比喻
and
的话，
uh,
那我们
all
这个随
the
论是依靠什么呢？就是其实随论呢，就是
five
依靠这个
skandhas,
风
12
论而起的。
ayatanas, and
那
18
同样的道理，
dhatus
就是我们这
are
个有情的业和烦恼的话
created
呢，
or
实际上是依靠这个非力作业而这个产生的。然而我们
which
也知道，就是这个风论
attract
的话依靠什
suffering
么呢？就是风论
and
是依靠这
they
个
are
虚幻
based
这个
on
现象
the
的。
karma
那
and
同样的道
afflictions.
理，就是非力作业的话呢，实
And
际
just
上是
like
依靠什么呢？就是
water
就是非就是刚才
creates
业和烦恼
such
的话
earth,
呢，
all
依
the
靠这个非力作业
karma
而
and
这个产生
afflictions
的。
created
那最后这
skandhas,
个风论呢，依
ayatanas,
靠虚空
and
一样的，
dhatus.
非力作业的
And
话呢，它这
just
个依
like
靠这个
how
虚空。
the
最后
wind, the
虚
wheel
空
of
呢，就是
wind
也不依靠任
is
何法，也不助任何法。那就像我
the
们的
cause
这个
or is the
清净的
basis of
自
a
信啊，
water
就是
wheel,
清净
then
的这
all
个
the
自信，我们的这个光明。就如来藏的话呢，其实
improper
它也是
conceptual
不依
activity
靠任
is
何法
then
啊，就是
caused
不依
by
靠
the
任何
karma
法，
and
也不助任何
afflictions.
法。这一
Just
点就
as
应该
how
那
the
这个
space
如来藏到底是依靠
is
谁
the
呢？
basis of
如来藏
all
没有
that
什
does
么
not
依靠
rely
啊，没
upon
有依靠不行
anything.
呐，就是没有依靠
The
不行，那
mind
如来藏
or
很
the
孤独啊，
luminous
这样会
nature
不会
of
掉下去？
Buddha
我说没有
nature，
没有事的，就
is
是
not
你看这个地水火风，地水火风是
dependent
依靠
on
虚空，但
anything,
虚空
although
的
it
时候
holds
它不
out
需要依
and
靠谁，但是
it
它还是
supports
很好的，
everything.
就是虚空它
People
自
may
己的
feel
本
that
体，它有自
well,
己的一个生
if
活方式，对吧？
this
就虚
Buddha
空它有
nature
自
is
己
not
的生
rely
活方
up
式。
on
然后我
anything,
们
is
也
it
担
going to
心这个
fall
如来
off
藏
from
孤
the
独啊，如
space?
来藏
It
没有依靠
cannot
的话呢，没
be.
事，就是如来藏它
It
有
is
它的
not
一个
like that at
这
all.
个生
Buddha
活方
nature
式，
is
就
not
是它
lonely
应
at
该
all.
就
Buddha
蛮好
nature
的，
has
就
a
你不
way
用
of
担心，就是你应该担心自
keeping
己
a
不懂
different
的，
lifestyle. You should not
对吧？
worry about the Buddha nature, rather, you
下
should
面
worry
要
about
不要再
yourself.
讲一个颂词？好像讲不完。那要不要讲到这吧？
Maybe we should stop here today because we can't finish in the next stanza.